So last Sunday, I watched, the last Sunday show of The Line, and around an hour and 55 minutes, someone called Jamie, this woman from Arizona, she calls in to say that she believes there's something more to this life, because there are some things that she personally experienced which she struggles to explain. And then she starts recounting what she experienced since she was a child, and that she had asthma attacks. And when she had asthma attacks as a child, she didn't have the medication available for some reason. And every time she had the attack, she would pass out. And during the call, she describes her passing out as dying or passing away. She described it as passing away every time. And every time she passed away, she would have an out-of-body experience, and she would see herself and her sister sleeping next to her from the ceiling, from that vantage point outside of herself. And basically, the father would come in, he would do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he would try to revive her, and then she'd have to be flown to an Air Force base. And as she was describing the experience to Matt Dillahunty, he picked up on the fact that she said she passed away, and he was taken aback. He said, "Well, what do you mean passed away? What do you mean you died?" And then as the conversation progressed, he said to her that, he implied that she didn't really exit her body, that she had some kind of hallucination. And he spoke with certainty, as though that is the most likely explanation, that she had to have had some kind of hallucination, that she never left her body. And I think he is coming from a materialist standpoint. He believes that the mind is what the brain does. And basically, when she said, "I literally left my body," he said to her, "You shouldn't say it like that. You shouldn't say that you literally left your body. How can you be sure that you left your body? You should say, I felt as if I left my body." Now, the problem with that, and I can understand what he's saying. He wants to be epistemologically consistent. He wants to say, just because it feels like something, it doesn't mean that that is real. You could be experiencing some kind of illusion. But at the same time, there's a problem with that kind of thinking. First, he didn't experience what she experienced, right? He has no access to what she experienced, because as she was recounting her experience, she felt sure of herself that she really had left her body. So he can't be sure, but he completely dismissed it and called it a fiction. And how can you say with certainty that someone has experienced a fiction when you also don't have evidence for that? It's like he doesn't say to people, "It's as if I'm hosting a show called The Hang Up. It's as if I'm talking to random people who call in to talk about God, theism, atheism, politics, and stuff like that." He doesn't say that. He doesn't say about his own experience, "It's as if." And yet he would say, "I'm hosting a show called The Hang Up. I'm talking to random people on the phone."
Yeah.
And yet the way he has that experience is the same way in which Jamie had her experiences. Through the senses, you experience everything through the senses. So how can he say about her experience that it was just an illusion, it was just a hallucination? And yet, how does he know that every time he thinks he hosts a show, you know, hypothetically speaking, how does he know that every time he hosts a show called The Hang Up, he's not really in some mental institution talking to himself and banging his head against the wall? How does he know that? He can't be sure of that.
Well, but in that sense, he might have some evidence about being in a mental institution, right? Because if you really are, you might find suddenly some marks or something, right?
But say, let's say he is in such a deep psychosis that he's constantly experiencing some kind of hallucination. He doesn't, when he looks at the staff who's looking after him, yeah, hypothetically speaking. I know we're here and we've seen the show when he's on a show, but let's say from his point of view, every time he looks at the doctors looking after him, he doesn't see the doctors, he sees the line staff. You know, he sees Jimmy Snow, he sees, you know, whoever's on with him, Aaron Ra, and his friends. He sees his co-workers. He doesn't see the medical staff. And when he interacts with them, he feels like he's working. So he's constantly in that hallucination, and he doesn't perceive the world as it really is. Even though the doctors are giving him drugs, trying to like mitigate his psychosis, he's a lost cause and he's trapped in that world, and he never really sees the real world. And when he talks to the callers, they're just voices in his head. I mean, that could be, you could pose that to Matt Dillahunty as a possibility. He wouldn't be able to disprove it. There would be nothing about his senses that would prove or disprove that proposition. You know, so if
yeah,
he
but don't
can't
forget,
prove
something though. I
yeah,
mean, it's not like I'm defending him, but in this case,
no, sure,
remember the burden of proof. Whatever is your theory, you have the burden of proof. If you are entertaining that he could be in a mental institution, so what is your evidence for that?
no, sure,
You have the burden of proof.
of course, yeah, yeah, and
I sound like
obviously,
I'm defending him, but in this case,
no, I get what you're saying. I mean, obviously,
I
if
mean,
you know, if I were to call Matt Dillahunty and I posed this to him, I'd have to pose it as a hypothetical. I'd have to say, look, imagine this scenario. Imagine that you are not really perceiving what you think you're perceiving. We are just figments of your imagination. We're not real. You know, how can you be so sure that what you are perceiving is what's really happening,
yeah,
basically?
but I
And
think we don't need to go through the mental institution analogy because
yeah,
there are easier ways to handle it without going to something like that. But
yeah,
another
yeah,
thing, I don't know Matt so well. I think you know him way better than me. I saw him a
yeah,
few times, but I think he's a materialist. And another thing I want to say is that Arlindo told me about this video, and I saw the video. I mean, he talked to the audience about how it was, but I've seen the video. And I wanted to call on Wednesday, but I wasn't experienced with the line, with that channel. And I should have called earlier. So they asked me if I was an atheist, and I said yes. And I said, no, unfortunately, we have it full already before any calls. So they said to call later, but I mean, it's extremely difficult unless you call super early and you catch them when they start being open to calls.
yeah,
So I don't know, I might try again. But another thing I'm not sure about how he sees this, but when he says, you should have said, I felt like I left my body. So who is that I that he's talking about?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
materialists, I think they relate the body. I mean, they relate everything to the body, right?
yeah,
So if you are saying I felt the body. It's like they're saying my body felt the body, right? That it's kind of like
Yeah,
doesn't make a lot
yeah,
of sense.
yeah, yeah,
Or maybe they see the awareness and something like an epiphenomenon of the body that suddenly, for some magic, you have
yeah,
some awareness and then you
yeah,
might feel something. Um, but anyway, one thing that I see here is that he assumes materialism is the default. He's not the only
yeah,
one though. So basically, it's like materialism should be the default, and whatever idea that is non-materialism, you had the burden of proof. But it shouldn't be like that. I mean, when he says, if you said that you left the body, you you are supposed to show evidence, right? But
yeah, yeah,
actually, what is the evidence that there is a body when you think
yeah,
about it? I mean,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
the counter from idealism that actually the only thing we are sure about is consciousness,
yeah, yeah,
because we experience, I mean, thoughts are experiences. So we experience, therefore we are. I mean, it's like I
yeah.
experience,
That's what,
therefore I am.
yeah,
Similar to what Descartes said,
Descartes,
like,
yeah,
I think, therefore I am.
yeah,
But
that's right.
bodies can be two things, can be real material objects like materialists think, but they can
Yeah,
also be simulated.
yeah,
It's not a fact that matter exists. It's a
yeah, yeah,
belief, not a fact.
yeah, yeah,
But these materialists, they think it's a fact. They also think it's a fact that the mind is brain states.
yeah,
They take it as a fact. I
yeah,
mean, a lot of times I ask people on Facebook to show me evidence that the brain generates consciousness.
yeah.
And they cannot show me a scientific paper that proves that.
No,
There's no way.
no.
It's a philosophical stance, so it cannot be proven that way. I mean, you
And
can,
yet,
yeah.
and
Oh,
yet, that's exactly what Matt Dillahunty says. He he is a materialist. What amazes me about Matt Dillahunty is when it comes to everything else, when it comes to things to do with God and atheism, is are you justified in believing in a God? Is there enough evidence? Is there enough compelling evidence? He goes through all the motions. He's basically very good at epistemology. How much can you claim to know, right? But when it comes to the notion that souls could exist, there could be an afterlife, it's almost like his epistemology fails. He just assumes that because most things can be explained from a materialistic standpoint, right? You look around, there appears to be cause and effect, there appears to be laws of nature, and basically science is a very good method of inquiry. You observe how things happen. If they happen consistently, then you can say, well, every time I do this, that's going to happen. So the theory becomes a fact, basically. But when it comes to consciousness, even though scientists can't explain consciousness as an epiphenomenon, if they assume, well, maybe consciousness is generated by the brain as a byproduct. But how does that happen? Even though they haven't got a coherent theory as to how that could possibly happen, Matt Dillahunty just assumes that that has to be the case. But where's the evidence for it? He's not an expert, and even if he points to experts, they won't have a coherent explanation for consciousness from the materialistic standpoint. But he has said before, I've heard him say before, with certainty, he said these very words, right? He said, the mind is what the brain does, right? And when you listen to that, you think, but that doesn't sound right, because how can felt sensations of qualia be reduced to neurons firing inside your head? It makes no sense. My mind, you know, when I'm looking at you right now, I don't have the experience of neurons firing. That doesn't enter the equation. I just see you as a person. So he has said before as well, I take the view of people like Daniel Dennett. He's said before, consciousness isn't what it seems. It's some kind of illusion. We think we're conscious, but we're not really conscious. That's his thinking. That's his way of thinking. And he said as well that the self is like a user illusion. He basically takes the model of Daniel Dennett. Daniel Dennett has written a book which a lot of experts have laughed at, called I don't know if you're aware of this, Consciousness Explained. And many people, many renowned experts in the scientific community have actually made fun of the book and said that should be called Consciousness Explained Away, because it's almost like avoiding the hard problem. It's just saying, basically the book says about the hard problem, well, we haven't figured it out, but it has to be generated by physical states. And basically, consciousness is not really there. It seems like something magical is happening, but really it's just some kind of illusion, just like all the other brain porkies that you get when it comes to the soft problems of the mind. You know, like Daniel Dennett usually talks about the example of a painting. When you look at this painting from a distance, it's like the painting of a bridge, and you think you see people on the bridge. It's like you're looking at a bridge from a distance, and when you look at the painting, you can see people on the bridge. But when you get closer to the painting, you realize that it's not really people that you were looking at. It's just tiny blobs of paint that hint at the forms of people. So he says, you see, the brain fills in the gaps. You just think you're seeing something, but you're not really seeing anything. So he extrapolates from that to say that the entire thing's an illusion. Even awareness itself is an illusion. But that doesn't make any sense, because
I think
there is awareness. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think scientists should be more precise when they talk about these things, because I don't agree when they say the brain does something. The brain, because it's not proven that the brain has awareness.
No.
It's not something. It's not a fact. I mean, it can be a belief, but it's not a fact. What is a fact is the mind. The mind is the one that experiences, because by definition, that's how we define it. The mind is that which experiences.
Yeah.
Another thing that atheists most, well, I would say materialists.
Yeah.
But in general, this is the correlation. Most atheists are materialists, and most idealists are theists, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's why you and me are the minority, because we are the combo of being atheists but being idealists too. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
There is another thing that I want to say related to brains. If you compare a brain to a computer, the computer, because I mean, the reason I'm aiming to this is this, because I think you mentioned something to me. I don't know if it was now or before, that if we are really brains talking, how come we know so little about the states of our brains, right?
Yeah.
In a computer, if you compare a brain to a computer, and in order to say that we are brain states, the brain needs to be some kind of like a information system. It needs to be a computer system.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how would you generate information without being an information system itself? Because the other alternative is being like a terminal. A terminal doesn't need to be a computer. It has to have enough computer power to receive the video stream So with a terminal, you can connect to a real computer and get the video stream, right? And you can interact. So,
yeah,
but anyway, in a computer, at least you can know the temperature. If you have thermal sensors, you can know the temperature of the CPU, the temperature of the other computer parts, right? You can
yeah,
know the size. You can inquire with the software and see how much disk space you have, how much you can, how much RAM you have. So at
yeah,
least you have access to some parameters of itself. But
yeah,
how come? I mean, the brain is like this magical machine that apparently can generate simulations because dreams are simulations.
yeah, yeah,
The thing is that what we can disagree with is what is the cause of those simulations. So materialists are forced to, because they don't have any other choice, to make the brain the source of the simulation. But I mean, is there any scientific paper showing how the brain simulates dreams?
no.
Did
They
they
have the proof. They have the burden of proof, and they haven't
yeah,
been
they
able.
have exactly. It's not demonstrated, and it's not easy. I mean,
Yeah,
when you look at the software, and Matt, I think, knows something about certain software because he mentioned Unreal 5. Unreal is a very powerful 3D engine
yeah,
for 3D animations.
yeah,
I use Blender, so
yeah,
it's not easy to compute, to render a scene. Even the lighting, the where to cast the shades is it requires a lot of computation.
yeah, yeah,
So where is that computation? And it needs to be fast.
yeah,
I know
yeah,
that people say it can be like a neural network and all that stuff. But something's curious that how come we don't have any parameters of our brains? I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of computation, but no data from the computer itself at all. Because
yeah,
what kind of data? We don't know the RAM capacity we have. We don't know disk space. We don't know speed. I mean, you can measure. There is software that you can measure the speed of the CPU, like
yeah,
benchmark software. There's nothing. So this magical computer that is the brain apparently can
yeah,
simulate dreams.
yeah,
And not only
yeah,
that, they can create different new minds, let's say, because when you have a dream and you are talking to 9 other characters, because it's possible in a dream, you're talking to one person, they reply, then you talk to another person, the other person laughs, ask you something, you reply. There can be a conversation, let's say, well, maybe other people can dream more than 10, but at least in certain circumstances, people can get a conversation with like 10 people, right? I don't know if
yeah,
you have something like that.
yeah, yeah, yes, I do. Yeah, yeah. No, it makes
I
perfect
might not
sense.
have it often because usually my conversations are usually less than 5.
Yeah,
There are 2, 3, 4, 5. But even 3 people, it's not that easy to simulate because I mean you have to, for example, when you talk, you can say your subconscious or your part of your conscious because let's say you're in a lucid dream. So your
yeah,
part, the one that comes from your awareness. So no matter how much lucid you are, that comes from one mind, let's say, right? Like one
yeah,
software running.
yeah,
But then the answers, usually the answers don't change much whether you are lucid or less lucid, right?
yeah.
Uh,
That's right.
because well, when you're lucid or more lucid, you might remember more. But anyway, and sometimes it happened to me. I tell jokes, and other people might laugh or not, right? And but sometimes also other people told me jokes.
Yeah,
So if you laugh at other people's joke, that means you didn't know the joke. So how can the brain like block you don't knowing that joke and then create a joke in the background? It's kind of like very weird, right? And then
it's really weird. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I suppose it's almost similar to the to those instances when you're trying to remember something and you feel like it's on the tip of your tongue, and it's like on some sense you feel like you know the answer to something, but then you can't recall the answer, and you're like, oh, what is it, what is it? And it's almost like you're searching for the answer somewhere. And the thing in dreams, sometimes it feels like the characters you meet in dreams appear to know more than what you know, and sometimes it's the other way around. So it's almost like they've got their own independence. And like, it goes back to the argument I was making before about how does Matt know that he's really experiencing hosting a show and stuff like that. So it goes back to the the argument from solipsism. I mean, most people would say that solipsism is absurd. It's absurd for me to sit here and look at you and say, well, only I exist. You're just a figment of my imagination. You're not really there. So why would I be talking to you in the first place? In order for me to interact with you honestly, I have to assume that you have a mind like I do. So it's called the theory of mind. So if when you're dreaming, you're practically in an identical situation, you're interacting with these characters and they reply to you, then why would you assume that it's all happening in your head and you're actually talking to yourself? That's what Matt would say. Matt would say,
I think the reason they say that is because they cannot, materialists, when I say them, is meaning materialists, is because in order to avoid that, they need to find an external source. And in materialism, they don't find any external source, so they are forced to say it is the same source. It's like you grab your phone, right? And you make a call, but if you assume the only thing that exists is your own phone, when you're talking to somebody, you have to talk to yourself. There's no other choice because there's no any external world. There's no internet. There's no somebody else that can call me. And if I receive a call, like relating to a dream, I receive a dream, the call has to come from the cell phone for a materialist.
That's right. Yeah. You
see what I'm saying? Right. They're forced. They're forced to isolate that.
Yeah. What makes them think that the brain isn't some kind of receiver, as opposed to, for example, as opposed to generating consciousness itself? In fact, I've actually heard, not just Matt, but I've heard several materialists use the analogy of hardware and software. I've heard several materialists say the brain is the hardware and the mind is like the software. But that doesn't work because, first, the brain isn't exactly a computer. It's not like hardware because the brain constantly changes. The brain has neuroplasticity. It has different dynamics.
Well, but it is still a hardware, though. In that case, I agree with them.
Right.
But not exactly. I mean, I agree in the part that it's a hardware, but what I don't agree, this is the part I don't agree.
Yeah.
Matt, for example, says he's a critical thinker, right?
Yeah.
So Matt, if you hear this, listen very carefully. If you, for example, let's suppose we have access to a computer, right, remotely.
Yeah.
But so you and me, you're let's say with me next to me, and we say let's explore one computer, like kind of like acting like a hacker. Right? So let's get into this computer. But well, let's suppose like there is a special connection to that computer, right?
Yeah.
And you want to find out if that computer is connected to the internet or not. For sure it's connected to you in this case, but I mean, this is an example. I don't want to make it a big deal how we connect to the computer.
Yeah.
Or give another example that we are in a room, we have access to some room in the Pentagon, let's say. We don't see the cabling. of a computer, but we want to find out whether that computer is connected to the internet or some network or not.
Yeah.
So basically, a critical thinker will try to find out whether that computer has an external access to information, whether it comes in or goes out or not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
the default should be, I don't know whether my mind can access external sources or not. That should be the default. I don't know. But
I don't know. Yeah.
the materialists force the default and they want to make anybody believe that the default should be the computer is not connected to anything.
Yeah, yeah.
It has to be investigated. So if we investigate our dreams, how come there is access to information that it seems that it doesn't come from us? Because we get surprised. I mean, in dreams we cry, right? Some circumstances make us cry. Is the brain so intelligent, so magical that can create something without us knowing that make us cry?
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't that weird?
yeah.
And you're saying that you're a critical thinker and you keep assuming that is a local source.
And it's funny because for something that's supposed to be so well integrated as to create consciousness, because that was the leading theory of consciousness. Oh, it has to come from integration. For something that's supposed to be so integrated, it seems like we get experiences which hint at being separate, not so well integrated. You know, if we can cry at our own experiences, at our own dreams, that assumes that there's some kind of separateness going on there. And also, when they say that, when it comes to hardware and software, and they assume that the software is analogous to the mind, when you look at the software, even the software itself is also something physical. It's like a physical structure. You know, you see the screen and the light, and it's actually conveying information to an independent observer. You know, we look at the screen and then we say, oh, this is what it means to me. I'm reading this on the screen, you know, blah, blah. But the software itself isn't analogous to the mind. The software is closer to the hardware in a computer than it's closer to something like
but there is a relation to the mind. The software, and when we say software, we should include also information in general. So when you transmit information, I mean, in the physical, we are limited to the speed of light. You cannot transfer, at least not for now. Then maybe they might find a way to trick quantum physics to bypass that. Maybe aliens can do that, but so far, I don't think it's possible. But
not unless you use quantum entanglement.
But entanglement doesn't really get you new information. But anyway, I don't want to go deviate to quantum. This is not the purpose of this. But so when I say software, I'm talking about information in general. They can be transmitted, like it's transmitted in the internet. So that's the thing. I mean, we can relate information with the dreams. Dreams are information. The difference is the materialists think the information is always local. And then idealists don't have that problem. For idealists, since everything is mental, there's no problem that information is not local. We don't have that. We are not forced to assume that. I mean, there can be idealists that still assume that dreams come from ourselves. I mean, that's not something that contradicts being an idealist. Some idealists can assume that too. But I mean, they don't have to. Like materialists, they are forced to.
True. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, where materialism fails, especially with the hardware software analogy, is that from a materialist standpoint, you can explain how the hardware gives rise to the software in a computer. You know, if you're an expert and you look at the transistors and the circuitry, you can explain all the, you know, from the hardware, how it gives rise to the software all the way through. every step of the way. But when it comes to brains and consciousness, and you assume that it must work exactly like a computer, it has to be something like hardware to software. When you try to do that with the brain, there's like a chasm between, you know, the activity of the brain and phenomenal consciousness. There's no connection there, apart from when you observe the correlation, and you know, the neurons sometimes correlate with some mental experiences, you know, mental faculties. But when it comes to consciousness itself, being aware of this and that, the brain doesn't explain it. So that's where,
but
that's
I
where
think
the
there's a
analogy.
bigger, even a bigger problem than that. So far, science is not able to extract memory from brains.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
if everything is physical, should be able to get all the memories that you have right now. They should be able to extract it from information from the brain, but it's
Yeah,
not done.
no.
Not done, because for somebody like us that are idealists, we are not forced to assume that all our memories are related or correlated to our brains. That's another thing I wanted to say earlier, but I didn't say it, is that materialists tend to assume that correlation implies causation, but it's not. It
Sensation.
doesn't.
Yeah,
Because something can be correlated, that doesn't mean it causes it. Like you
no.
turn on a radio, that doesn't mean that the information comes from the radio itself. It
Yeah,
can come
yeah,
from an external source.
yeah.
So, but then another thing I wanted to ask you, because this is something, a common belief that we talked about before, but I'm going to bring it up again. A lot of people, and this is like a spread belief, they assume dreams come from the subconscious. I
Yeah,
mean, people repeat that because they heard it somewhere and they repeat it.
yeah.
But anyway, for example, I want to ask you, what is the subconscious? That's another thing.
I,
If you ask people what is subconscious, usually they don't know how to answer.
yeah, and how can they have
So
evidence?
how would you define what is the subconscious?
To me, right? If we're going to take the theory that there
What
is a
is not?
subconscious,
Maybe it's easier to define what is not.
I'll tell you what the subconscious isn't. The subconscious isn't everything that I'm aware of right now. You know, if there is a subconscious, it would have to be something that I'm not aware of. So when it comes to that type of theory and how it would enter into the equation of a whole mind, for me, the only way it would make sense for me would be something like what Carl Jung envisaged. So Carl Jung would say there is a self with a capital S, and that this self oversees all other aspects of the personality. So it's almost like every other aspect of your personality, like could be the persona, could be the ego, could be the shadow, revolves around the self, and the self is like a manager. But the self has to contend with all these other aspects because they're like archetypal complexes. They are psychical energies. They're like forces to be reckoned with in themselves, and they if the self isn't careful, they can have some kind of influence. So that in order to find harmony, the self as a manager has to prevent the temptation to repress those aspects, like the shadow, for example. The shadow would be something that we don't like to see in other people, that we repress in ourselves. So you shouldn't repress it completely, but at the same time, you shouldn't allow those aspects to dictate to you how you should conduct yourself. So there's also, Carl Jung would say, there's a danger that these other aspects could take hold of all other areas in your life, like the shadow could take over you completely. You could become what you abhor in other people So you would be shadow possessed, and if you become shadow possessed, you no longer have a conscience. You no longer care about right and wrong. You know, your morality goes out the window. You just, you know, you become like the Joker in the Batman, you know, an agent of chaos. You just do things and you don't care. That's not the same as ego. It could interrelate with ego, but a shadow possessed person doesn't even care about how he comes across to other people, because he doesn't even care about the opinions of other people. So the shadow can't allow that to happen, but sometimes it does. So when I say self, sorry, the self can't allow that to happen. It's a self with a capital S. It's your true self, and you must find harmony. And
But how do you, I mean, you're talking a lot about all these things, but how are these things related to the subconscious?
yeah, to the subconscious, right? So imagine you dream, right? According to this view, imagine you dream, and you know, like we were saying before, there are some things which we aren't aware of, which can surprise us in dreams. You know, a character could tell us a joke that we've never heard before, and then we'll laugh. That's how we react to it. It's as though we didn't know that joke. So the entire personality could be made of these independent sub-personalities, and we are like a manager and we oversee it. So that's within our domain. But just as we have the main consciousness, these other sub-personalities could also have some kind of sentience, and they could try to control the body, for example. You know, like we were talking about the case of that guy who had split personality disorder, and he went to see a shrink, and he said to the shrink, well, I've got this other personality that takes over. This alter ego is trying to take over my life, and it's ruining my life, and he keeps interfering. He possesses me sometimes, and you know, and then it ruins all other aspects of my life. So you know, the shrink said, you know, come and see me again at this time. So on the next session, instead of the original personality, the original person who controls the body, the shrink got the alter ego, and the alter ego said, why are you trying to get rid of me? Why don't you get rid of the other guy? He's boring. I'm much more interesting. So in that case, I don't know where I've read about this case,
No, I know what you're talking about. How do you relate all these sub-personalities to dreams? Or because when I mentioned the subconscious, I wanted to mention to relate it to dreams. So
this is my theory. My theory is that there are these characters which could have their own subjectivity, which live inside our personality domain, and they sometimes influence us, but they take like a backseat. Imagine you're the driver, you're at the steering wheel, and you're driving your car, which is you conducting your body.
I understand the taking the back seat, but what I don't relate to it much is that I don't know exactly what you're pointing to, but I'm assuming that these sub-personalities act in the dreams.
Yeah, the thing is,
I have a problem with that though, because if it's some of our sub-personalities, our dreams should be very similar in the sense that we should see a personality very often, the same personality. Because let's suppose I have two sub-personalities, right? Let's suppose one is like a joker, another one is like a sad person.
Yeah.
My dreams should alternate between a sad person, interacting with me, or the joker interacting with me. I should be recurring between those two, right? But in the dreams, we have a diversity. Sometimes we have somebody like a woman that flirts with us. So what is that in my sub-personality? It's a woman. I mean, you have interactions with the other sex too. you have a way bigger number than a couple of. That's why,
Yeah.
I mean, even though that doesn't mean that the subpersonalities don't exist, but I don't think is the main cause of the content of the dreams.
Yeah.
Let me give you my opinion about the dreams seen by a materialist and the way I see the dreams. Um, for a materialist that assumes everything is local, the
Yeah.
the dream content or the dream generator might be seen like a software that runs during the day, but with a low voice. And when you are aware, when you're awake during the day, that voice is so low you don't hear it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like it has the potential to create content, but you're in charge when you're awake, so you're the one that gets the content from the world and all that, right? So, but then when you're sleeping, it's like you shut down all this computer software, and then this software that kept running there suddenly it becomes the main software running, and then it
Yeah.
generates the content on the dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be, I think, what they take as subconscious. Subconscious is like a software running in our minds. I mean, materials will say brain, but I say minds.
Yeah.
That when we are sleeping, when we are in REM states, they take control.
Yeah.
So, and they create the content of the dreams, right? But then, why can't we create the content of the dreams when we are awake? And now, I wanna keep talking because now I'm gonna bring my experience.
Yeah.
If you compare my dreams when I was I don't know, since I remember a few years old, 3 years old, 5 years old,
Yeah.
and the dreams now, the dreams when I was 5 years old were pretty rich in content,
Yeah.
right? So they haven't changed a lot. I mean, they changed, of course, in the type of content, because when you're a kid, you might have dreams more about what you were playing, right? Stuff like that, what made you sad. Now, when you get older, your dreams might be more about relationships, about work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I'm able to generate dreams from an awake state.
Yeah.
And in that case, my awake state, you can say one possibility is that my awake state is the one generating the content,
Yeah.
right? So, but actually, that's not what I noticed, especially because I've been practicing this for like 25 years. And mainly the last 3 years, I've been practicing more seriously.
Yeah.
And the way I work right now is more like an AI. Like I give an idea, I throw an idea, and then the content is not generated. I don't feel it like it's generated by me. It comes, and it's up to me. It's like water coming, and it's up to me to regulate how much I want of that water. If I want to change the way, it's like a stream. It's like a video stream.
Yeah.
So I regulate.
You're
So
receiving
basically,
something like channels.
yeah. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, a video stream. If I'm okay with the video stream, I keep it. I just try not to touch it much, right? I just let it come the way it wants to come, and I'm okay. It's stable. It's complex. It also computes all the things necessary for a simulation, because I observe the shades. I observe when I'm turning like a drone camera, um, the shades go perfect. They're always perfect. To me, the simulation comes already processed. It's not like my mind is processing at runtime. I think it's something that comes. So basically, it's like this. If you get a video stream of a 3D animation, for example, you can come by a direct source generating the rendering, but it can also come from a video stream that it previously generated that content. So kind of like it exported from 3D software like Blender or Unreal, and generated the output. It exported, it rendered and exported the render into a video. To me, it's easier to assume that it comes already as a video stream, not as something. But at the same time, it's kind of like tricky because when I turned it, it has to be some kind of like a 3D video because it has to be ready to move according to how I move the camera, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you record an animation, when you export an animation, you select the motion of the camera. If you want to select a different motion, you have to do it again.
Yeah.
For example, let's suppose I make a simple thing that you zoom in to a car. You want to show like a car commercial, right? So you are far from the car, you see the car running, and then you zoom the camera. Let's say you shoot it with a drone, right?
Yeah.
But then if you want to record again with a different drone, let's say a different camera, you have to do another generation, right? You have to generate it again because the camera it has different positions.
Yeah. That's
So,
right.
in any case, to me, it's more reasonable that the source of the visualizations I get being awake. And listen, Matt, this happens at noon. It happens at 10 a.m. at noon, 2 p.m., 7 p.m., anytime you want. It has nothing to do with sleeping or you can create dreams being awake, and you can later on convert it into a lucid dream. And once it becomes a lucid dream, it's no different than another lucid dream.
Yeah.
You might be with a better awareness than a lucid dream that you started by becoming lucid because you started from a pure awake state.
Yeah, that's right.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that there is an external source. From there on, speculating that what is that generator of the external source, that's a different story.
Yeah.
To me, it's an intelligent system, some kind of like similar to an AI.
Yeah.
But this is the thing also now going back to Jamie. Jamie was saying something, I don't know if you paid attention, that she was a bit afraid of coming back to her body because she remembered, I think from previous OBEs.
Yeah.
It was, she said like a roller coaster, like a vortex or something like that.
Yeah.
So why would the brain decide to repeat generating this vortex, roller coaster? Why would it do that? It doesn't make any sense. It's not, to me, it's not reasonable. To me, it's reasonable because that vortex is related to something that happens with consciousness.
Yeah. This is why it would have been a great idea to interview her so we could go into these details, but he didn't give her much of a chance. In fact, he just dismissed her experience completely. And he also said that prove it's not a lucid dream. And I wished she had said to him, well, I can prove to you it wasn't a lucid dream, because at the time when I had the experience, I didn't construe it as a dream, because that's the definition of a lucid dream. A lucid dream is a dream in which the dreamer knows he or she is dreaming. But he kept pushing this narrative, almost like he didn't understand himself the meaning of.
I have another argument against Matt. And we can relate. I mean, you and me, you have a lot of experiences, lucid dreaming, out of body, and I had my chunk too. Maybe we're not the typical, but some other people can relate just with dreams. I think you like me had a lot of times feeling that sensation, even if you were not lucid, coming back to your body or getting out and coming back. Like for example, you're falling asleep and suddenly you go again, and then you move your body because you feel. Okay, that sensation of coming back to your body, leaving your body can be too. That sensation the experience of that sensation is very consistent. Do you agree?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not like at random the mind decides that you have that sensation. It happens correlated to you about to being awake.
yeah, yeah,
It has a correlation. It doesn't happen whenever it feels like. So if Jamie was in a lucid dream, why would she feel the sensation of the roller coaster turbulence at that time? Why would the brain suddenly, out of the sudden, for no reason, because apparently that's what Matt believes, would decide
yeah.
to create that sensation so that she
Uh,
can feel that sensation just by chance, for no
yeah,
reason? No, Matt, it doesn't make sense that it's for no reason. It is correlated to her about to get back to her body, because a lot of people feel the same sensation when they wake up.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not unreasonable at all.
yeah.
It
No,
is not unreasonable,
yeah, yeah. That's
right?
it
Why would
amazes
he
me
say
that
it is unreasonable?
yeah,
It
yeah,
is not.
that's right. Yeah,
There is a correlation, and a correlation happens to a lot of people. It happened to me. I don't know how many times I felt the sensation before waking up. Maybe thousands of times. What about you?
yeah. Several times, and it is
A lot of times,
consistent.
right? Even if when you didn't have a lucid dream, but you still, before
Yeah,
waking up, you had some sensation, right?
it's consistent with having just experienced movement of going towards something, which would be your body, and then all of a sudden you wake up and there's a jerk. There's a jerk there. It's like, oh, you know, it's almost like the body itself is disturbed by something coming in. It's definitely a consistent experience there. But I guess Matt would just dismiss it as something that the body does, and it happens to match the hallucination. It would be something by coincidence. You would have some kind of to him. He he can't he can't entertain the possibility that something leaves the body. It would have to be something that the body does, and it convinces itself of its own delusion. It's something that's the best thing. That's my best guess as to what he would say to that. And it's really sad that he just dismissed her experience just like that. He kept focusing on prove that you really left your body. Well, that's her experience. And
Another thing I want to say before I forget, so then maybe you can give me your opinion. If we compare to a video game, and let's say in the video game, let's say it's a video game that as a player I can be, in general, I would be a human, right?
yeah,
But then suddenly I decide to be a dog. I mean, I can be a dog, right, in a video game. So I
yeah,
have less options because I won't be able to talk unless it's weird. It's a dog that talks. But in
yeah,
general, I will have maybe fewer options, but I will be able to move the dog, let's say in a video game, right?
yeah, yeah,
So from a software point of view, software design, there's no a huge difference how to program a dog or program a human, right? It's
yeah,
just a matter of, I mean, both have four extremities, right? I mean,
yeah,
when the dog has four legs and we have two legs and two arms, but it's
yeah,
very similar in that sense of motion, right? We
yeah.
move with
That's
two
right.
legs, they move with four legs, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's not like a completely different type of thing.
yeah. It's closer to
So
our experience than say like maybe a bird or a worm. A worm would be more alien to us than the movement of a dog. Yeah, yeah,
so it's a matter of how the software connects to the player,
yeah,
because what happens is the software assigns some objects. I mean, we can tell. I mean, when I'm talking about objects, I'm talking about programming. So you can say that a human or a dog in a video game is an object. Let's
yeah,
call it uh, Alan, the name of the character
yeah,
in the video, Alan. So Alan is an object. The player gets assigned to Alan. If I want to become Alan, let's say in the game.
yeah,
So it's like a connection between the software and the player.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So, and that doesn't mean, because some people want to say, okay, a connection with the player and the character. So then it's like the player is consciousness, the character is not, and then that means you're being a dualist. But that hasn't need to be the case, because for idealism it works well too, because in idealism everything is consciousness, everything is information, everything is mental.
That's right.
So is the difference is that the player has awareness and free will,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the character doesn't. So the body actually doesn't have free will. So that means the brain doesn't have free will either.
yeah, yeah,
The only thing is that if the character in the game gets injured,
yeah.
then the software might change for you, for your motion to be slower. You know, that you wouldn't be able
That's
to run
right.
fast,
Yeah,
or you lose strength.
yeah,
So that correlation it keeps existing
yeah,
between matter and the mind.
yeah, yeah. I
But
also thought that analogy. Um, you know, like the Oculus, where you have to wear a headset and then you
yeah,
play the game. Imagine you're playing the game, and also like when it comes to memory, uh, sometimes everything that you've done in the game, you want to save, you know, so it's there. But say you you fail to save the game, and you lose everything. So within the game, all memory is lost. But when you take the headset off, when you take the Oculus off, you sort of remember your experience of having played the game. So it's sometimes I wonder if the reason why we fail to remember things in our bodies, you know, as human beings, is because the brain is doing something to prevent it. And I'm only saying this because I don't know if you've heard of hyperphantasia. You know, like about 2.5% of the population can experience very vivid images. You know, they their imagination can be as vivid, not just visually, but with all the senses,
well,
like
I
hyper.
was able to get to improve on that just by practicing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. So
at the beginning, I was seeing only dark scenes of trees, very little color, very little green, but dark green, not much. That's how I started.
yeah, so the more you've practiced, the more hyperphantasic
So
you
that's
become.
something that can work like a muscle. That if you start from nothing, but you keep doing it and doing it and doing, you can run at a good speed. And
Yeah. And I was going to say to you, when they've studied like hyperphantasic people, and I want to see what you make of this, right? Obviously, they were looking at their brains, and they noticed that there's a correlation uh, between vision and, you know, how the frontal cortex interrelates with the early visual system in your brain. So these two areas of the brain interrelate. But something that they noticed, right, when they artificially increased the excitability of the neurons, the visual experience wasn't so clear. But when they decreased the excitability of the neurons in these regions, vision suddenly became clearer. And I'm thinking from the perspective of materialism, it should
right.
be the other way around. It should be like if you increase the excitability, then the image should improve. But what they found was the opposite. When they
Yeah, but
decreased the
the
excitability,
opposite makes sense though from a meditation point of view, because the less volume, let's say, you have from the physical, the easier becomes to visualize stuff.
yeah,
It's like you lower one volume and then it's like you have two radios on, right? And one
yeah,
is like a middle volume, but the other one is a high volume. But then when you start turning down the one with the high volume, then you listen to the first one way better, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
I want to
right.
say
Yeah.
something else before I forget, because I have so many things in my mind. And
I know.
another thing I was thinking, I don't know, I wanna see your opinion. If materialism is true, I went through a transformation, right? Because I wasn't being able to visualize many things in the past, and now I'm like a wizard,
Yeah. Yeah.
a visual master.
Yeah.
I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm thinking now, what is it that I cannot do more than
Yeah.
uh,
That's right.
I
The
got better
possibility.
with text, even with eyes open. But another thing I want to also mention now here, I think sugar, any sweets are a bad thing for these
Yeah.
practices, because every time I get more sweet stuff, the quality of my visuals is lower down, and when I don't consume much sugar, they go up again. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, assuming materialism, uh, my brain should have changed from my practice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Because I'm able to generate more content being awake. There should have been
Yeah.
a big changes in my brain. So I wish that some scientists maybe can study my brain to see the
Yeah.
changes, or how different my brain is compared to other people. Another thing
Yeah.
I don't see, maybe there are some studies about it. People that have photographic memory, for example, what are the differences in their brains? My
Yeah.
daughter says she has photographic memory. I am
Wow.
getting some photographic memory now. So that's
Right.
another thing I'm improving. I'm getting some. Right now, for example, I think of a person I know or I saw online, and I can see a lot of images of that person. Before, I
Yeah.
wasn't able to do it. So I'm
Yeah.
also improving in photographic memory too.
Yeah. But
So
whereas she had it, your daughter had it naturally,
yeah,
and you
uh,
and you are beginning to get it because of your practice.
yeah,
And I reckon with your improvement in visualization, I reckon it would reflect on your brain in the sense that some areas of your brain would start to become more developed, especially the visual cortex would be like more developed, and we'd see like more connectivity between those regions of your brain and the frontal cortex. I mean, according to the research, but it does say, like some of these studies do say that it's very controversial because under different conditions, you can get different results. It all depends. It's so complex, and it's very hard to say for sure that those areas produce or have any kind of causal effect on or impact on vision. And in fact, sometimes it suggests that the vision is already there, but then it's the activity that gets in the way of it. So
yeah. Because now, even though I said what would happen from a materialism point of view, from an idealism point of view, it could be that I am connected better to other sources, external sources, non-physical sources.
yeah,
And because of the way I connect, I improve. Because of the connection improvement,
yeah,
that might not reflect a lot on my brain.
yeah,
It's
that's
more of a matter of my improvements in my consciousness itself. Because
right.
another possibility also is that our memories are not stored in the body; they are stored somewhere else, like
Elsewhere.
in the cloud,
Yeah,
in some cloud. And when we die, we have access to those memories again.
access. Yeah, a bit like the Akashic records. I think
Yeah, I
that's
was going to say the Akashic records.
yeah, yeah. I was going to say I saw Bernardo Kastrup talking to Hans Bustra, the guy who started a podcast called Reality Reminded. He wants to explore idealism. And he talked to Kastrup in a Q&A. And Kastrup said something very peculiar. He said, um, within the same body, you can have different conscious perspectives. And he came up with this simple observation. He said, when you look at your index finger and you close one eye, you can see from the eye that's unblocked, you get one perspective, and then you block the other eye and you open the other one, and you get a completely different perspective. But when you unblock both eyes and you look at the finger, he said there's a coalescence of perspectives. And he said, basically, there has to be some kind of metacognition that merges both conscious perspectives together. So it's like two different observers, but it becomes one. And then he said,
yeah, because it's similar to, sorry, but I want to point out, it's similar to having two cameras and a software that would combine the videos from the two cameras. And that can be done with AI, that you can combine two cameras and create a 3D image or 3D video using AI.
Yeah. And then he said within idealism, it would, because it's all mind, consciousness, basically the consciousness in me and the consciousness in you. So you can extrapolate from that two different perspectives in one body. And then he said, yes, you know, me and you, we're two different people seeing from different perspectives, but then the very essence that becomes aware of these perspectives is the same. So on some level, we're different people, but then when you go to the conscious foundation of reality, there would be a merge. I mean, what do you make of that? Like a coalescence? It's
No,
like,
well, I don't quite agree on
right.
that. Actually, this is something that I want to say in the case that Bernardo watches this video, or Donald Hoffman, that both Arlindo and me would like to be in a video with you, Bernardo, or with you, Donald Hoffman. I think we can add our experiences to the conversation about consciousness, because we can improve our connection to external sources and can give different perspectives than the normal. I'm also recently going back to studying Seth, the entity channeled by Jane Roberts.
Yeah.
Trying to be objective, trying to see if in what he says makes sense or not, and seeing a lot of stuff that it makes sense. I think if I study more, I might be able to find also some inconsistencies. But even if I find some inconsistencies, I value the stuff that makes sense, because you don't have to agree 100% with somebody. And also, I think related to channel, you can be skeptical about all the information coming from the same source. And you can also say, one thing you can assume is that maybe not 100% comes from the same source. And another assumption can be that the information got filtered and got some errors from a source as well. So, and at the same time, it's also possible that the entity is kind of like doesn't know certain things, or has certain beliefs that
it doesn't have to be a missing.
But in any case, I think it's very difficult to fake the material from Seth. You have to be super intelligent and super with a super imagination to being able to entertain so many multidimensional views and have a consistency and integration among all those views. It's not easy to fake or lie about those things.
Yeah.
Especially coming from the 1960s, 1970s. This material was before the Matrix movie, and Seth was talking about camouflage, probabilities. He was talking about stuff that is now
ahead
in
of time.
quantum mechanics, quantum physics, probabilities. He was talking about this stuff in the 1960s, 1970s.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really strange, and sometimes I wonder. She had some health problems, didn't she, right before she died, and she developed dual vision or something like that. So sometimes I wonder if when this Seth came through her, because it was so powerful, because it had such a powerful frequency, like the vibrations were so strong that it kind of fried her brain. So if her brain is like an Oculus, it caused problems to her headset. I don't know. It's just the impression I get. I sometimes wonder because of the way she suffered just before she died. So it makes me wonder if it damaged her brain. Again, it brings back the mind-body relationship.
Yeah, there are relationships between mind and body. I mean, if you are so stressed, I mean, if you are depressed, your mind can screw up your brain. I mean, nobody is arguing the correlations. That's something that
No, yeah,
I mean, and neither you or me are, because some people assume that okay, you're an idealist, so that means your consciousness is the only thing that happens.
yeah,
So there's no correlation with the brain. Oh, but I found some correlation, so you must be wrong. But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
totally a wrong assumption.
yeah.
Both,
I was,
in fact,
I
that
was
says
going to say,
both materialism and idealism
yeah,
are okay with correlations. Correlations cannot prove any of the two false.
yeah, yeah. The only thing is that Matt would take one step further and say that correlation is causation, and I've heard him make this argument before that um, the reason why in dreams it seems like you're talking to other people, because for Matt, in dreams you're just talking to yourself, and he goes, the reason why in dreams you feel like you're somewhere else and you're talking to other people who appear to be as sentient as you are is because the dreaming mind can create any kind of illusion, any kind of scenario. So he would say that uh, it seems like you're talking to people separate from you when you're dreaming, but really you're just looking at semblances of sentience. It's not real because your brain has already learned what it looks like and what it feels like to talk to a conscious independent person out there. I mean, what do you make of that? Obviously, he would have to prove that materialism is true for that to be true. But
Yeah,
he
now
also,
I was just thinking about two things in favor of external sources. One
right?
is that you have also channelers. So are you going to assume that all these, or mediums? I mean, I think the difference between medium and channel is that the channel lets the whole information. Is like in general, they say the entity uses the body or uses and the
Yeah,
medium is more like, okay, you told me this, I pass the information. It's like you have one phone here, and then, oh yeah, she told me that, yeah, she says that. But I prefer to use the label channel or channeler
yeah,
because it's simpler. Because I feel like these are like channels.
yeah,
So that's why I don't say I'm a medium with source. I say I channel source. It's simpler.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the information, I mean, they change the voice or everything. They change the personality. Why would you assume that is yourself doing that? Because also, this is what I'm thinking. If you're assuming in both cases, with you being a channeler, channel an entity, or in dreams, you are the one generated, instead of in both cases, there is an external source.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if that's the case, uh, if it is an internal source, why you don't see people meditating, generating dialogues with other person? Because if I can, I mean, I generate dreams, right?
Yeah.
from being awake. But I don't do the. I mean, if I get something communicated with me, I am totally awake. I would never assume it's myself in the background suddenly coming up with some like
Yeah.
remember that thing that I published that I was visualizing moving my camera. I went to a lake, I saw rocks, and suddenly boom, a rock
Yeah.
splashed the water just I
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
like a meter in front of me. I felt like the water. I felt, why would I do that? I was
Yeah.
totally conscious, totally aware.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? I mean, trick myself into suddenly bringing a rock. How would I process that? How would I bring that event?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because also
That's,
when I channel source, a lot of things come by surprise.
yeah. Yeah.
Like for example,
Surprise.
I say, okay, I'm gonna visualize letters. This was in a practice with Michael. Okay, and I was practicing and I was trying to get a random letter and then
Yeah.
saying the letter to him. So I was saying A, J. Now I'm actually visualizing letters too. But suddenly I got a 5. I got numbers, and I told Michael, well, 1, 3, 5.
Yeah.
I mean, you get surprises. Why would you get surprises if you are the one doing the whole thing?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. Um,
And do you think that that's unreasonable, like Matt say,
no, no, no.
unreasonable? No,
I
no,
I think that Matt would say
that's
that.
not unreasonable.
Yeah. I think from
Oh,
Matt's
going
perspective,
back,
it
sorry,
would be.
before going back to the, remember I was talking, I think I left it somewhere, about the computer that you're studying, whether it is connected to the internet or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can speculate by the, for example, one thing you can do is, let's say you explore a certain folder, right? And you see certain images there, right? And
Yeah.
then, well, let's suppose that you can delete the images.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
you're for sure, you know the contents on the whole computer. You see those, there are no other images in the computer because we remove all the images.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
go back to the computer and you see new images,
Yeah.
what is the best assumption? That the computer is connected to some other source, right? That's the most reasonable assumption because that the computer was able to get new information from somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, you can also say that it can be some software creating the images. But what if you
Yeah.
also somehow you're sure that those programs were never open?
Yeah. Yeah. I see what.
And when we have lucid dreams, that's another thing. Most of the times you don't find repeated content, right? For example, if you, unless it has some emotional connection, like for example, I might
Yeah.
find going back to
If
the
you
building
revisit
when I
scenes.
was a kid, right? But
Yeah.
other than that, if you find, I mean, if you have a random building,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's very unlikely the same random building will appear again in 2 or 3 dreams, right?
Very
For no
unlikely.
reason.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like expected from a computer not connected to the internet, right? Because a
Yeah.
computer not connected to the internet might have some, like Windows. Windows comes with some images, right?
Yeah.
Windows 11. So it has the background images that you choose. So you have with a certain set of images that come with the computer.
Yeah.
You should expect that if you're a materialist and think the dreams come from yourself, that images will be repeated.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like what you expect with a Windows to, if you're looking for an image and you're gonna see the typical background images from Windows, right?
Well, the materialist would probably say something along the lines of, "You can dream about flying pigs, but pigs don't exist in reality. But because you've been exposed to normal pigs and you've also been exposed to birds, your brain can put the two together, create an amalgamation, and voila, you can dream of flying pigs." I mean, that's probably something that Matt Dillahunty would say. It's the brain is some kind of computer that is so advanced it puts it can make connections in altered states, such as dreaming, that it normally wouldn't do in the normal day-to-day perception when you're awake.
Yeah, but it still is unreasonable in the sense that computers, in order to be faster, they use cache. For example, when you browse in Chrome, you by default it stores the images in your local computer, right? So that when you go back to websites that you go often, for example, the image of Google, it doesn't have to transmit the image from the Google website again to your computer, the Google logo, right?
Yeah, it's
because
already there.
you already have it in your local computer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why wouldn't dreams use cache from yourself, something that you already dreamed before?
Yeah,
Why would
yeah,
you generate every time new images?
yeah. I like what Michael said before about you can have your own bubble, but then if you go far enough, you can reach shared space. I mean, so you can have both. You can have your own personal space, and then you can have your, shared experience. Um, it's funny because Matt Dillahunty considers himself to be like this critical thinker. Everything it has to make sense based on evidence, but then he would say that why assume? Right, here's a question: why assume that solipsism isn't true when you're awake, interacting with other people? Right, it's reasonable to think everyone else has their own minds. You go by a theory of mind. So solipsism is false. It's not, people are not figments of your imagination. But why assume that solipsism is true
Oh,
when you're asleep? Yeah.
yes,
So
I see
that's
your
the
point
question I
now.
was asking.
Before, when you said it the first time, I didn't click a lot with
Yeah,
that.
you see what
So
I
you're
mean?
relating solipsism with dreams that is
Yeah.
generated by our own minds.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Matt would tell you,
exactly.
in a dream, you have to be a solipsist. In a dream, everything is a figment of your imagination, right? Reified. But when you're awake,
Yeah,
it
you
has a
say
different
on
behavior.
one side you say solipsism is crazy, but
Yeah.
dreaming from your own content is not.
Yeah, yeah. So why does he make that distinction? Why is it different that when someone is dreaming an altered state of consciousness, why does he have to assume that solipsism is true? Why is it that solipsism all of a sudden isn't absurd when
Well,
you're
but
dreaming?
in a sense, he has some point that since we are in a shared reality,
Yeah,
we keep bombarded with evidence that other beings behave similar to us. I mean,
yeah,
you behave similar to me. I see your motion. I see how you answer my questions.
yeah,
I mean, I can assume you might be an NPC, a
yeah,
non-playing character, but I
yeah,
mean, if you're an NPC, you're very creative, right? Because I mean,
yeah, 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 yeah.
you I cannot predict your answers. I mean, it's so in that sense. I mean, against solipsism, he has a point that we have evidence that
Yeah.
it's unlikely to be the case. But
It's
but with
unlikely. Yeah, yeah,
dreams,
that's
with
right.
dreams, even though we don't have the evidence as clear as real life, I mean physical, I mean when you're awake. But but if you think about it more, and if more research is done, and one way would be with the analogy of the computer that we try to figure out if it's connected to the internet or not,
Yeah,
by having tools with maybe brain scans. If we cannot find the files on the brain, that means the files are not in the brain; they are somewhere else.
somewhere else. Yeah,
And actually, if the content of our dreams, the content of our visualizations are usually surprises, they vary a lot, they are
yeah,
random. Uh, that matches a lot with content coming from the internet. Because in
Yeah.
the internet, you have way more information than your own computer. So, for example, are you going to compare the files that come with Windows 11 and or a Mac?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be unfair also to Mac users. I also have a Mac. I
Yeah.
have a Mac Mini, Silicon M1. But lately I'm using more of a PC. But anyway, um, don't you agree? I mean, in the internet, you want, for example, you want tigers. So you go to an AI and you put a prompt, give me a tiger, or give me a tiger walking in the street, or walking on Manhattan, or a tiger next to the pyramids of Egypt, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you get that.
And you get that. Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
it won't come from your own computer, right? It will come because
From the
even
internet.
if you have installed AI software, you still
Yeah.
need the data. You need to download the files with the data from the tigers. To be able to generate a tiger in a city, you need
Yeah.
the information of the tigers.
Yeah.
That,
That's
and that
right.
is way easier when it comes from the cloud, when it comes from the internet, because there are
Yeah.
servers that can store
Yeah.
a lot of information. There are computer centers that have a capacity. I mean, I don't know, maybe 1,000 times the capacity of a typical
Yeah.
computer, right? And then with all that amount of information, they can send you random stuff all the time. And
I see why.
that's what
Yeah.
we experience in the visualizations and dreams.
Yeah.
And by the way, before I forget, did you notice any progress with visualizations and stuff? Practicing?
Recently, for me, I really have to focus. I'm not at your level, but it comes really easier. It comes really easy, right? When I'm about to sleep, like at bedtime, even if I'm not falling asleep, if I'm really rested,
Yeah.
yeah, at bedtime, my visualizations seem to be way stronger than say if I were to do it now. If I was to do it now, I'd really have to, take a deep breath and like close my eyes and try and like rest on it and then wait for something to come. And then it takes a while during the day at noon, yeah, in the afternoon, it takes a while for the visualization to progress, to become stronger. It's like it takes a while until I get this. It's like vague and then it becomes stronger. Whereas if I'm rested and about to go to bed, um, it comes easy. It takes me by surprise. The vivid imagery sometimes just like that, and I'm still awake. I can still feel the bed, but the images are really vivid there. It's like it's a higher level of strength in the quality of the images, and I'm like, oh wow, and then I want to really examine these images. But when I try to examine them, it's almost like my keen observation, my focus just kills it.
Well, but
So,
if you
sometimes,
keep practicing, there is a way. It's like a subtle way that you can keep it by being more relaxed, more.
relaxed,
It's
and then to
difficult
become,
to explain
yeah,
to somebody else, but by keep
yeah,
trying, because I had that problem before in the past too.
yeah,
But
yeah,
then now it's gone. Now I can keep it very stable.
yeah, yeah.
I was telling,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's like I don't want to really examine too much, and when I do that, that's when it really starts to engulf me. It's almost like I have to find a balance. I can't focus too much at the beginning, otherwise it's just going to disappear. But if I just relax and just let it do its own thing, then it might turn into a fully fledged dream scene, for example. It's really strange.
I also noticed that I usually better after like 5 p.m. But now it gets darker like at 5 p.m.
Yeah,
Than earlier than that. Also, I'm good just when I wake up. If I wake up or about to wake up, I can visualize very strong. And then, but another thing, I don't know if you can try at some point. Do you consume sweets?
I
How
try
about
to avoid. I've never been much for sweets, and I try to avoid them. In fact, I used to be a smoker, like a heavy smoker, and basically because of that, it eroded the bone. My dental bone has completely eroded, and then I was diagnosed with gum disease. But now it's okay. I always brush my teeth, but I avoid sugary drinks. I avoid sweets. Sometimes I have a chocolate every now and then, but I don't like
But
sugars
did
very
you notice a
much.
change when you started consuming less sugar than before? Did you get your lucid dreams or better or?
There was a there was a period in my life where I went a bit self-destructive, and the problem with me is that I didn't notice a change. The thing is, I had this period where I was taking drugs, smoking a lot of marijuana, and I barely remembered my dreams, and I couldn't lucid dream. So that period of my life was really like almost devoid of like visualizations. And at that time, I was also consuming sweets, and I used to have sugar in my tea and coffee. Now I don't have sugar in my coffee. I enjoy a perfectly devoid of sugar cup of coffee. But when I decided, right, I have to stop smoking, marijuana. I have to stop smoking, full stop. Especially when I had my diagnosis of gum disease. And once I stopped, and then the doctor also said you have to try and avoid sugar, because sugar is what can really do some damage and promotes bacterial growth in your gums. So once I stopped all of that, I began to remember dreams and get like vivid imagery. But the reason why I never made the association between sugar and lack of good visualizations is because I was already, I went through a period of being drug addled, like consuming marijuana and drugs. So yeah, but now that you mention it, it would make sense that sugar is bad for you. I suppose when you take sugar, your body is forced to be more active to try and break down the sugars, so you end up spending more energy than what you're consuming. And if you really overdo it, you can develop diabetes, and people can develop all sorts of problems. And then you can't relax, and you don't feel comfortable in yourself. And I suppose it can disturb your sleep as well. So if you're not consuming sugar, when it comes to bedtime, because your body's not, I'm guessing because your body's not as active trying to break down those sugars, you can just relax and let the you can really get into a state of deep relaxation, and then you can start focusing on the visuals. The visuals come to you. But like you were saying, it's a constant stream that's always there. You're just not, during the day it's there, but it's not. How did you put it? I can't remember. It's there like a daydream in the back of your mind. But when you really stop and you start focusing on it, it's almost like you tune into that channel. But yeah, I would say because I also had to give up sugar, I never made the connection. I just assumed that because I stopped smoking marijuana,
Yeah,
that's the
me
reason
too.
why I.
I'm gonna try getting less and less sugar.
Yeah,
Another thing that works for me is consuming. I mean, eating mushrooms, regular
not
mushrooms.
magic,
Well, no,
not
not
magical,
magic. No, yeah, just regular.
normal. Yeah,
I think it improves that too. The visualizations.
I was going to say, do you like eggs? Because that's supposed to increase your acetylcholine levels, and they say it can prolong REM periods of sleep. It can be good for visualization as well,
Oh,
and they use it. Yeah, I mean that's what they say. They
maybe one
call it
day I'm
the
gonna eat only eggs and mushroom and see what happens.
yeah. Then you could become really, really like hyperphantasic, isn't it? Really, like,
No,
you
but
know,
anyway, I think it's as long as I avoid sugars, I'm pretty good.
yeah, yeah,
I don't need I don't need much more.
yeah. Matt seems to think that you can only believe in something when you have evidence for it, and that works really. I'm not saying that isn't right, you know. That works really well in a scientific context. You know, why would you believe in something if you don't have tangible evidence? But life isn't always about being in a lab. You know, there are situations where sometimes you do the opposite of what the evidence is telling you. You know, for example, I've had experiences like, you know, I didn't want to be put down by what the evidence, by what the immediate evidence was telling me. You know, I wanted to overcome some kind of obstacle. You know, when I was a kid, right? I'm going to say this very quickly. When I was a kid, I used to look at basketballers and I used to watch how they used to spin the ball on their index fingers. And I wanted to do the same, right? But every time I tried, I kept dropping the ball. So evidence was telling me that every time you try to do this, you're going to drop the ball. But I persevered. I refused to accept that. I thought, no, I'm going to really work at this, you know. And people used to say practice makes perfect. So I carried on. I went against what the evidence was telling me, and I persevered. And eventually, today, I can spin a ball on my index finger for a long time. And I practically became what I was aiming for. I believed against all evidence, against all odds, that I could achieve that. And today it's a reality. So I think if you take the thank you, if you take the attitude that, oh yeah, if you don't have evidence for that, why would you even entertain it? I think that's a bit of a fallacy, really. I think you will let yourself down eventually. You can go to the extremes of, I only believe in something if there is evidence. Well, sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And yeah, and I think that experience just proved it to me.
I also want
So
to say that what I don't like is that they assume that the default should be materialism, and the
yeah,
default should be, I don't know, should be the default. So the default should be both ways. Is it possible that information from dreams can come from an external source? It can be yes, or it can be no. I
yeah,
think both have some reasonable. I mean, both are reasonable. Well, we gave the reasons why an external source is more likely during
yeah,
this conversation. But at the same time, I don't want to just laugh about the people that think comes from themselves.
yeah,
But I mean, what I want to say is for them to be open-minded, to try to practice the things that we practice. Who knows? Maybe you're gonna have an out of body, and you might find it reasonable to think that is your consciousness really doesn't feel. I mean, your body, or that it makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I think I told you, but anyway, I'm gonna say it again. Sometimes I practice sleeping with the TV on, and I notice that sometimes I hear the audio from the physical. Sometimes I don't. It's like
yeah,
there is no. I don't think it is predictable. I mean that you're gonna listen all the time or not listen all the time. I think it depends on what your consciousness is doing.
yeah,
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had experiences like that where
If
I'm putting
materialism
things.
was true, you'd expect more consistency on that, right? Like either you always hear something or you never do, or I don't know.
Yeah,
And another
I
thing,
think, yeah, I think Matt is you know, he used to believe in God. He used to be like a Southern Baptist, and I think he still has the tendency to believe in things without evidence, like materialism. I think to believe that the brain, made up of things which are unconscious, somehow beget consciousness. I think that's believing in magic in itself, really. I don't think he realizes this. I don't think any materialist, even I, because for a long period of time, I was a materialist, but there was something in the back of my head niggling at me saying, but how? How does the brain produce consciousness? And now it's I realize how much of a problem how much of a hard problem that really is. And I think to believe that it's somehow generated by the brain is almost like believing in magic. It's like believing in miracles.
Yeah, those words, brain and subconscious, they are used to explain things that they cannot figure out any other way to explain it. But there are
Yeah,
alternatives. That's what we talked about today. There are
yeah,
alternatives to the. I mean, just because some beliefs are popular, they doesn't mean that they are true. Right?
exactly. It's the
I'm
alpha
going to
hidden
agree that they
fallacy.
are very popular. I mean,
Yeah,
most of the people are going to say, "What do you think?" If you ask them, "Where do you think dreams come from?" And I think we can do a test. Most people are
yeah,
going to say from the subconscious because everybody says the same thing.
yeah, yeah. And they seem so sure of it, but then where's the evidence? Are you sure it's really coming from your subconscious? How do you explain new ideas? You know, those eureka moments, the creativity that you get. It seems to come to you from somewhere else. Like, oh my God, I've got this amazing idea. I have to do something about this. I have to get creative. Where was the idea before? If it
Yeah,
was
I think
already
most
inside,
people what they do is they use the appeal to being obvious. They say, but it's
yeah,
obvious. I mean,
yeah,
the
yeah,
mind is brain states. Why? Because it's obvious. What else can it be? If you think it is not like that, prove it. So
yeah,
they take that as
yeah.
so they're
They
behaving
go very easy.
like somebody says, if you think that God doesn't exist, prove it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
that's right.
they criticize people that do that, but they do the same thing.
Yeah, they do exactly the same thing. That's right. That's
The
right. I
default,
really
I
do.
think the default should be always, I don't know. What do you think?
I think I think it's like what Bernardo Castro said. I know, like, you're not going to agree with everything that he said, but one of the things he said was maybe the mistake that we've made is to assume that the world out there is not mental, and then
Mhm.
that's where all the problems come from. Because once you assume that the world outside of us isn't mental, then you get the mind body problem, you get the hard problem of consciousness. You start to realize you can't explain uh, the very essence of awareness itself. So,
Yeah, that,
but
that the word is mental, that consciousness is fundamental. We
yeah,
agree with Tom Campbell, Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Castro, and even our beloved Rupert Spira. We don't agree on other things, but on this consciousness being fundamental, I mean, we all agree.
yeah, we agree on the promotion of idealism, which makes more sense than materialism. But then obviously we will disagree with some of the things that they also promote. I mean, they have their own different perspectives, especially when it comes to Rupert Spira. There is,
And Seth also says that consciousness is fundamental.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I read some of the things that you posted from the book, and it's quite striking that he was already saying that back then, and the woman, Jane Roberts, yeah, she doesn't seem like the type of person that would come up with something like that, and because I think her story is that she wasn't that imaginative when as an author, but then all of a sudden when she began to channel this entity, she began to speak words with a different voice and a different intonation, and she began to make all these observations and revelations, and it's just so rich that, you know.
Yeah, I want to say something.
Where is all that coming from? Yeah.
I want to say something about channeling too. That even though I think Seth is like an advanced being, I don't see many other sources of being too advanced. I mean, I don't. Even though I think that communicating with external sources is something possible, I think I do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think all the sources are reliable.
No.
Some sources seem like fake, seem like coming from an AI or coming from a bot. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you talk to a bot in Telegram or something, and you get some channelers, they get these responses that don't make a lot of sense. And then you go with the typical, oh, just love each other, simple
Yeah.
stuff. But that one thing doesn't take the other one. Even though most of the sources are not that good, there are very
Yeah.
few good sources. Like said, is one of the few. I think it's the best of the best
Yeah.
I got information about. Um, I think Tom
It's,
Campbell is a good source too.
yeah.
But you don't see a lot of good sources around.
No. And it's funny you mentioned that, because even in dreams, and especially when we lucid dream, we can notice this. Some dream characters seem to be more advanced than others. And I'm just remembering some research that was conducted by a guy called Paul Foley. I'll probably send you a link later on. Basically, Paul Foley was researching the possibility that dream characters might be conscious. Like, that was his hypothesis. He was a Gestalt psychologist. And when he got like a group of subjects, experienced lucid dreamers, to test, whether this is true or not, he got the lucid dreamers to ask the dream characters certain questions, or sometimes to perform certain tasks. And the results from the experiment was that the dream characters were really successful at verbal tasks, but when it came to arithmetic, they were really bad. They were consistently bad. Like, they were as bad as an infant, and more often than not, they got simple calculations wrong. Like, a character would be asked, what's 2 plus 2? And they might say, 5. And then they would, are you sure? And then the character would say 6. Are you sure? And then finally the character might say something like, 4. And I wonder about that. What is that? Why is it that they can be really good
Actually,
at verbal
I
skills?
also wonder if some channelers did that test too, because I think it's also possible that some channelers channel NPCs too.
Yeah.
When I talk about NPC, I think it's kind of like an output from an AI. It's like an output from an intelligent system.
Yeah.
But anyway, it would be nice to being able to communicate, being awake, and have certain communication where you can test that. You can ask arithmetic questions. Like how much start with? How much is 2 plus
Especially
2?
with channelers. Yeah.
They say 5. I say, "Oh, get out of here!" It's like,
It's like you're talking to what's that one, that AI? I think it's Chatbot or Cleverbot. There's this AI on Google called Cleverbot, and it's so bad. I think it's one of the earlier versions of AI, but it's hardly intelligent. It's more like a language model, and when you talk to it, the answers it gives you are so absurd. It's so far away from ChatGPT. It's unbelievable. But yeah,
oh,
it's almost like talking to one of those things in dreams. 2 plus 2. Oh, that's 5.
And if they take a long time, I say, why are you taking so long?
Yeah.
And
I
I
can't
think
see
I
Seth being
told
that bad.
Michael, sorry, what?
I can't see Seth being that bad though. But who knows? If
Oh, I
only
would
it had
like to channel Seth. Seth, if you're listening to this, try to
come through.
communicate with me, okay?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I think I was talking to Michael, like, I don't know, maybe a week ago,
Yeah.
is that if you channel an entity or you communicate, let's say in a lucid dream, or if you get information about you that you don't know, or you get information about somebody else, we shouldn't assume that that's a real being, though. Because, for example, I don't know certain information, right? But I go on Google and I find information, right? So
Yeah.
being able to find information, it doesn't mean it is a real being. It can be a system.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one thing that you do get though is that you get that is kind of like a fact is an external source. Because if I mentally ask something like, give me some data from some other place, like they say the name of the street number of certain place, and I get it, and then I go on Google and verify it, and it's correct. That means,
Yeah.
not 100%, but it's like likely it didn't come from my mind, right? It didn't come
Yeah.
from my brain.
But you
It
found out
came from an external source. But we cannot. If we talk to, let's say I talk to what I think is my mom. My mom was on the other side.
Yeah.
If I ask her, Mom, tell me what's going to happen tomorrow in the news, and she tells me something, and then next day that happens, and I see in the news, I still cannot guarantee it was my mom.
No. Yeah, that's right. I think that's one of the things that Tom Campbell
I
said.
would ask her more personal questions. Check for free will, like
Yeah.
choose between a 0 and 1.
Yeah.
You have to go with other type of tests, because from information, what you can get is that it doesn't come from you. But
Yeah.
you cannot be sure that it comes from a being with free will.
No.
For that,
It,
you have other type
yeah.
of tests.
It's almost like pareidolia in those states when you think you're talking to someone. Maybe there's a kind of pareidolia going on there. You're looking at the information and you project coming from a being that's relaying that information. But in actual fact, it doesn't have to be that way. It's almost like looking at clouds and seeing faces, practically.
Another thing that I would like to check, that I'm coming up with it right now. I don't know if anybody tried this. What about asking an NPC, "Are you an NPC?" I wonder if how much they can lie, how much they lie. Because what I do remember a lot is that usually
Yeah.
when I ask an NPC, what I think is NPC, usually they
Yeah.
don't answer, or they answer very vague, like,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
they deflect to something else.
Or maybe
Maybe,
they don't know who they are.
but they might have trouble lying though. They might not be programmed to lie. That's another possibility.
Right. Almost like AIs
Oh,
that have.
another thing you can do is ask, "Are you an NPC?" And it says no. "Do you lie?" Who knows? Maybe you can do some kind of test like that. Can you
Yeah.
lie?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
Do you
they're not
tell lies?
100%, but
Yeah.
you might get
Is,
something
is two
interesting, right?
is 2 plus 2 5? Yes. Do you ever lie? No. And it creates like the liar's paradox.
Then it is the NPC explodes and disappears,
Yeah.
or maybe it explodes and say you passed the test.
Yeah. Yeah. Some kind of profound test.
No,
It's
but I
like,
think
okay,
one thing
you've
I was
you've
talking
just
also
won.
to Michael is that everything points out the mission from, let's say, the other side is not to give us the information, but to train us, to give us tests. Usually they like to test us, right? It's not about giving you the information, because they like when we try to get the information.
Yeah. Could it be, right? Here's like a theory. Prior to you being born into this world and having this life, you already had all the information available, but you wanted to go through that experience. So by going through the experience is part of the process for you to forget. And hence the reason why you can't know too much about what you already had previously, all this other knowledge. And then you go through this. And then
but another reason can be that they don't want to disrupt
the process.
The simulation, because if you get a being that tells everybody clearly the truth, you're changing the game completely. Right now it's good, because when you have an advanced being like Seth, what is the percentage of the population that thinks that's true?
Yeah,
it would be 0.05% maybe.
Yeah.
Because even if you are New Age or stuff, you might not believe, or some religious people might not believe what Seth says. So some religious people, oh, but that's not like Buddha said, or that's not what Jesus said, and they won't pay attention.
Yeah, and in fact, some religious people might even say, "Don't listen to Seth. That's probably a demon coming through." You know, people have these preconceived ideas, based on their beliefs, and then they close themselves off to other possibilities. It's almost like they don't want to find out. They don't want to explore. It's not just materialists.
And another thing, even though this would not guarantee I'm talking to an entity with free will, but I would test an entity for knowledge, especially, for example, how will we get into anti-gravity? What kind of things do we in science need to, or for example, how do alien crafts work?
Yeah.
And something that makes certain sense. So maybe they will say something about quantum mechanics, something they try, or maybe you're not ready because you need to get more energy for this, or you need to find this particular element, or you have to create some other elements, or
maybe the aliens, the reason why they became so advanced and they uncover all that knowledge about the universe is because they finally accepted, at some point in their evolution, they accepted idealism is true.
Once you get that, you pass to another level.
Yeah, that's it. It's a possibility. I mean, I think there is a video where Castro talks about UFOs, and he says that they're probably, he said something like they're on another level. It's the reason why they can seemingly break the laws of physics is because they are no longer under the assumption that under the materialistic assumption, they accept idealism. It's all mental.
Yeah, but it also can be like in a video game that they have a better access. I mean, you have a level 3 and you can access to these things, but then you're level 4.
Yeah.
And they might not give us this higher access because we are not ready, and we might destroy the planet if we get.
That's right. They might be able to exit our space-time construct. They can go outside space and time and get around it and do things that to us would probably seem like magic. They're so technologically advanced, it would just seem like magic. And especially to, probably not so much to us, we'd be more open to other possibilities, but to people like Matt Dillahunty, it would be it would seem like magic. It would be like, oh, it's violating the laws of physics. This shouldn't happen. He would be telling himself, if he saw some kind of UFO doing something that seems impossible, he would probably tell himself, It must be a hallucination or some kind of illusion in the sky. That didn't happen. People would deny the experience itself. They would close themselves off to other possibilities, even if he claims to be open-minded. Because I think in the video with Jamie, I think he said that he was open-minded. I think at one point she accused him of being closed-minded, and I think it was the Jamie call, and he kept saying, "No, I'm open-minded. I'm open to evidence. I'm open to, don't accuse me of not being open-minded." If it wasn't Jamie, it was some other caller. But I think they don't realize it, but they are closed-minded. It's almost like they live in that box. They can't think outside the box. Everything has to fit their preconceived map of reality. Everything has to fit that puzzle. It's like, right, I've got this puzzle. I see how it works. I see how things connect. And anything that doesn't yet connect, if there's an idea in my mind about how, about other possibilities, if it doesn't fit my puzzle, the one thing that I already have, then I must throw it out. Then it can't be true. And I think they, by doing that, they stop themselves from going any further. They will forever live in that, closed-minded space. There'll be no progress. It goes against progress. If the minute you start entertaining the possibility that maybe reality is very different to what we think it is, the moment we accept that our intuitions, however strong they seem about reality, could be wrong. And let's face it, sometimes scientists make discoveries about reality that go against our intuitions, like quantum mechanics. When they found out about quantum entanglement, but Einstein said something along the lines of, calling it spooky action at a distance. And then he didn't like the fact that reality seemed to behave in that way. So he said, oh, there has to be some hidden variables, the hidden variables that don't really exist. It's been proven now. I think people tend to hold on to what they think they already know. And then they start forming this conception of reality that they think is right. And they extrapolate from what they already have. But really, that conception of reality is flawed. People should, even scientists, they should be prepared to tell themselves, well, maybe I really had it wrong from the very beginning. Maybe, they tend to say, oh yeah, you're supposed to falsify your theories in order to see if they stand the test of time. But I think I've seen so many scientists come up with theories that instead of trying to falsify them, they try to reinforce them. They become like pet theories. It's like, oh yeah, this has to be true. I must find out data out there in reality that somehow fits my theory, that somehow makes it stronger. They fall into that trap as well. And I think that's a mistake. I think there are other ways.
I want to go back to the aliens because I let you talk about that, and I wanted to keep talking about the aliens. Two things I want to say. One is that one possibility is that aliens are coming from the non-physical.
Yeah.
To test us, not watch us because they can watch us any way they want, but to make sure that they are there, that we see them, so that we don't. So we see that there is a potential power there that can stop us from trying something.
Yeah.
But one thing that is I find it curious that they don't attempt a communication that is seen by a lot of people. Regarding that, I thought of two things. One is if it's only from the non-physical, these aliens always come from the non-physical, that makes some sense. Is because they manage how much they want to interfere in the game.
Yeah.
They want to do something, but they don't want to interfere that much.
Yeah.
But another possibility is because apparently we have some alien craft, some in the US and maybe some in other parts of the world. And also they claim to have some alien bodies.
Yeah. I think
So
there's a current hearing going on about secret craft, and apparently these companies that were supposed to keep it secret, they now want to rid themselves of this technology for a good sum of money, but then there's like several things which are stopping them to do with secrecy. And I don't know if you've noticed recently, there's a congressional hearing about these secrets, and some guy called Grush, I think his name
I know.
is Grush. Yeah, he came out saying that he was in touch with people who worked for these agencies.
What I wanted to say about this is that to keep consistency, there might be real aliens too.
Yeah.
But then what I think is possible is that, let's suppose that, let's now assume, because the first assumption is simple, if there's everything non-physical, it still can be everything non-physical because they can fake a body. They can throw an alien body from the non-physical, right? They can still, but let's suppose now that there are some aliens. Another possibility is that the aliens can be very powerful too.
Yeah.
But maybe they are stopped. Maybe they know, because I mean, from the non-physical, they can read their minds, they can know what their intentions, right? And they can say, well, you want to interfere with Earth? We wanna allow it.
Yeah.
They might get a direct communication from the non-physical saying, I'm sorry guys, but we wanna allow you.
Yeah.
And maybe they already know that they are not allowed to do that because they know that they can be stopped from the non-physical. Maybe they already know that this is a simulation and they won't try. Maybe they try. It's like somebody says, okay, if you want to steal something, don't be so obvious. Just steal one or two things. So they allow these aliens to go and contact some people, make some abductions here and there. But if they see a big thing, they might be stopped. They might even, let's suppose that even if they did something, let's say they kill 10,000 people. I mean, from the non-physical, you can rewind the simulation to before those 10 people were killed, put them back. And send the alien craft away, and then even with a message saying, don't try that again.
Yeah, that's right. There are so many possibilities, really. I've seen strange things in the sky. I've never seen aliens, but I've actually seen at least five UFOs in my lifetime, because I'm always looking up at the sky. I've got a telescope. But one day I actually called Truth Wanted about this. I can send you a link to the clip where I describe me and my wife. We saw this UFO, and it was really strange because at first, when I noticed the object, it looked like a plane on fire, right, coming from the distance and getting closer, and it was massive in the sky, and it looked like it was about to crash. But when it got closer, and I was saying to my wife, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And she goes, "Yes, I see it. What is that?" When it got closer, and by the way, it had no noise, it was silent, and it was traveling faster than a plane. So already that seems to defy the laws of physics. And it got closer. When it got closer, the trail of flames suddenly disappeared, and the object became round. So imagine like a round object.
So it changed the shape? Change the shape?
It changed its shape, and it became luminous, and it was round like that, like a luminous flying saucer. And it flew over us. And as it was flying over us, I was like, oh my God. And then it flew really close. Must have been huge in the sky. And then it began to gain altitude. So it began to decrease in size, and it began to gain altitude. And I said to my wife, look, it's there, it's going up. And it went towards some clouds. And when I pointed at it, it became see-through, transparent. And my wife couldn't see it anymore, but I could. And I said to her, look, I see it, it's there. I could see an outline, like a pale, thin outline of the object. And I could see the clouds going through it. You know, like see-through, and you can see the clouds going through it. And
like
it was
cloaking.
Yeah, and he was traveling, and he made
you didn't have cell phones at that time? When was that?
I had cell phones. The whole thing, I really wish I could have filmed it, because it would have been an amazing video. I wish my cell phone was in my pocket, and I was so mesmerized. I didn't have time.
Oh
I didn't
my
even
God, you didn't think about filming?
And now I always think, if I see something like that again, because I'm looking out all the time in the skies, if I see something like that next time, I'm going to film it, because honestly, Claudio, it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it before in my life, and there's no explanation for it. It's not a helicopter. It's nothing that could possibly be man-made. And what was really strange about it is that it didn't make a sound, and it was traveling faster than a plane. So I don't know. To me, the possibility that it might be alien makes more sense than it's some type of secret technology made by humans. It was that strange. I couldn't believe it.
Do you know if other people that they saw that?
It was at night. It was at night, and it was quiet. The neighborhood was quiet. Everyone was inside. I was the only one outside with my wife, looking up at the stars.
But you didn't see any news about it? No, nothing.
I saw no news about it. I saw no one told me about seeing this strange object in the neighborhood at the time. I reckon we were possibly the only ones who saw the object, unless someone in a different part of town, like maybe a few miles away, saw the object, filmed it, or kept it to themselves.
Was it completely dark, or was
it was luminous?
No. I mean the sky. How was the sky? It was totally at night, totally dark.
The stars were out, right? It was a fairly dark sky, but the stars were out. But then there were some lampposts, so there's some light pollution.
So the sun was gone already, totally gone.
The
sun. It was after sunset.
Oh, the sun, yeah, the sun was totally gone. This was like possibly closer to midnight, so it was dark. Okay, but you could see stars. Yeah, you could see stars in the sky, but you could also see some clouds here and there. And when it first appeared from one side of the sky, and it was approaching, and it looked like a plane on fire, it was from a part of the sky that was clear, no clouds. But then as it began to gain altitude, it began to dim its light somehow. It became like transparent, and my wife couldn't see it, but I could see it, and I could see clouds going through it, and then it disappeared into the clouds, and it was gone. And when you see something like that, you feel like really strange. It's like I felt chills down my spine. It felt like I was looking at something that I've never seen before.
Did you guys tell other people?
Yeah, I told other people. Most people I say it to, they say things like, "Oh my God, if I saw something like that, I would run inside." Like people make these comments, but I was completely mesmerized. It's like I felt like weirded out. And somehow I wanted the object to land, to come down completely and land.
Did you wave at them like this?
I pointed the object, but
you
I didn't
wave.
wave. I didn't wave. I mean, I've seen other strange objects. This was the most amazing one. But there was another one which was that I saw just last Christmas, on Christmas Eve. And the funny thing is, this object was actually flying, but it was higher in the sky, and it was a smaller object, and it was like a string of lights, like red, green, and yellow, but it wasn't blinking like a plane, and it was coming towards the house in the sky. And I said, "Oh, look!" And then we even made a joke about the
Santa
object
Claus.
being Santa's sleigh. You know, it's like like
That's what I
Santa's
was
sleigh.
thinking. Now it's gonna bring the gifts.
Yeah, so I started waving at the object. I even went, "Hey, hey," like that. And the funny thing is, the object, one of the lights became really bright, like it was signaling back, like a yellow orange light signaling back. When I went, "Hey," it was like signaling back. It stopped in the sky, created the signal. I took it to be a signal, and then it dimmed that light again. It became like the same string of lights, and then it flew away, you know, like one direction, and then it curved, and then it disappeared in the sky.
Well, it's
That's
like
another.
saying
Yeah,
take
it's like
care.
saying hello.
Hello.
It's like saying hello. Yeah, but the one that looked like a plane burning and then became a massive luminous flying saucer. I wish I had done something more. I wish I had filmed it. I wish I had filmed it. But I did call Truth Wanted, and I described the sighting,
Oh,
and the guys said something like, "Oh, maybe it's interdimensional beings." You know, the host of the channel, he calls himself Objectively Dan. He made a joke about saying about Doctor Who. Oh, maybe it's Doctor Who doing strange things in the sky. Yeah, something like that. I can send you the link. But
yeah.
yeah, it's I've never seen aliens, but I've definitely seen some strange objects in the sky, and
Or
that one.
maybe they were aliens inside, but you don't know.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, it makes sense to think that there's someone inside. It couldn't be a massive drone. That object was too big to be a drone. In fact, it was bigger than a plane, I reckon, bigger than an airliner. So there has to be something inside, some pilots or some type of crew. And I really don't see the crew being human. Obviously, I can't say for sure that they were aliens, but you know, when you get that intuition, it can't be humans inside that thing. I've never seen anything like it.
It can be also like working with AI, like when we send a craft with no humans.
Yeah,
It's also possible.
it's possible. And the thing is, it was silent. It was so strange. How can something
Yeah,
be
that defies the physics as we know it.
It defies the physics. So
Maybe because they create a field, an artificial field that
yeah,
that blocks the air to being able to generate the sound.
yeah,
Because I mean, to generate the sound, you had to have pressure on the air. But
yeah, that's
if
right.
they can compensate somehow with some maybe energy field they generate, and
Yeah, there should be like maybe even a sonic boom or something like that. You know, like breaking the sound barrier. None of that is completely
right.
silent. Yeah.